Feel free to squeeze up here. There's some chairs up here for you guys. You guys want to get closer? There's some stools up front. Anyone else?
Nobody wants to sit so close to us.
Oh, no, it's kind of shy.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out. It's the last day of the show.
Thank you.
We're honored to have a guest tonight. Svea is going to be moderating this closing reception and artist talk with Mr. Ghost Teeth. So with that, take it away. If you guys have any questions throughout the duration of the talk as well, feel free to raise your hand and pipe up. And if you have any questions about Simon's process or what goes into his thought process, anything like that, any questions about any particular pieces, we can look around that way as well. So please carry on.
Cool. If I speak at this level, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let me know if you can't. And I should probably introduce myself. My name is Svea Vikander. I'm an arts reporter, and I host a radio show called Art Crush with my co-host here, Josephine Boydens, on KALX 90.7.
Yeah, I'm Simon Tran, aka Ghost Teeth. It's just the name that I had for like when I first started painting like 10 years ago. A buddy of mine was like a graffiti artist, and he went by Cert1, and I just felt like it was good to have a pseudonym and also something to write. And I thought about Ghost Teeth, and that was like in reference to those dreams that you have when your teeth fall out. I had that quite often at the time. Not so much lately, just literal teeth falling out, which sucks. And like that's getting old, I guess. But yeah, I thought about ghost teeth, and then he was like, "No, man, how about ghost teeth?" And I was just like, mind blown. I was just like, "Let's go with that." And I just stuck with that, and it was just one of those things where if this goes awry and it doesn't work out with the art, then it would just be this name. It wouldn't be me. And so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I can call you Simon.
Yeah, call me Simon. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's cute when Matt and Lena call me Ghosty. And by the way, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to do this show and working with you. This is the third solo show I've done with you.
Yeah.
The first one was like right after like I was at UC Berkeley. I was a grown man going back to college to get my bachelor's, and I met these two folks. They came to give me a studio visit and later just gave me a show, and we kind of worked things out and did a show on my birthday. Yeah, that was awesome. And you guys got me a cake. That was really cute. Yeah.
Maybe on this theme, if you could let the audience know how you charmed them into.
This is good luck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I came to a talk and then talked to you folks and asked you. Yeah, and I gave you a card and told you, I asked you folks to give me a studio visit when I was ready, and that was like months later, and you came to the studios over at Worth Rider, at UC Berkeley at the architectural building, and I had a bowl of candy, and I gave you guys suckers, and I told Svea that I enticed you guys with candy.
Yeah, that was it. No, actually it was the Missy Elliott video.
Before doing this art thing, after high school, and through high school, I was in acting and theater and did a lot of improv.
Were you in a Missy Elliott video?
The very first thing I booked was a Missy Elliott video.
What video?
It was this.
Video?
It was Work It. Yeah.
Really?
I was in it only a split second. Yeah.
That's an amazing video. Wow. Okay, we're done here.
Sorry, man. I didn't bring it up.
I told him not to bring it up.
Sorry.
How many minutes in?
What? It's at the end, and it's like maybe a second or something that I was in it, and I was just acting like a fool. I was like dancing like a monkey. It was
like 2 solid seconds.
Yeah, 2 solid seconds. Yeah.
That's
and
amazing.
I was like commercial actor for a while, and like was part of the Screen Actors Guild. But it was like one of those things where it's just like years of doing it and going to auditions and all that. It accumulated to not even 10 seconds of like footage, you know, because of like the commercials you're in. You're only in it for a few seconds, even if you're like a lead commercial, lead role or whatever, you know. So I just felt like it was just like I needed to do more with
you
my life.
wanted 15 seconds of fame.
Yeah, I wanted, 16
Okay.
seconds would be nice,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, so I decided to kind of. There was other things, of course, but my mom once told me that it's just like, you know, you got to see in this life. You got to see what you can do with your two hands, and I think painting and was that thing that I'm doing with my two hands for right now, I guess.
What does your mom do with her two hands?
Nothing now. She's retired, happily retired. She was working in education. She was a preschool teacher and after-school care kind of, and she got me into that too. Actually, like right after high school, I needed a job, and she's like, "Why don't you try the child development centers and work in after-school care?" And that worked out. Working with kids was cool, like for the most part, you know, and. So I did that, juggled acting and going out for auditions, and when I booked something, you know, that would pay for rent for, you know, months on end,
right.
or, you know, for whatever. And then I'd also have this like part-time job that I kept up with, and that kind of just stuck with me. Working in education and servicing people has always been something I've been doing. And, yeah, right now I'm at Berkeley High School working in the special ed department as an instructional assistant. This is like going into my second year, and I hadn't really worked in a high school full time before. And
I hear that working in a high school is like going back to high school.
it's crazy. I used to have those dreams where you go back to high school and you're a grown person and you're naked,
Yeah.
you know, and like, thankfully I'm not the one getting naked at the high school, but I've seen naked kids.
You've seen naked kids?
Oh man, I shouldn't even talk about that.
No, probably not. It seems like a wild school. Like it seems like a really exciting school.
High school is crazy.
High school is a
It's
crazy place.
Yeah.
It's really not okay.
And working in the program that I'm working in, like, I mean, bless their hearts for the most part. Like people, the faculty and the staff, they're definitely not in it for the money, you know. And it's just like, you know, giving back. And for me, it's completely selfish reasons I'm working in the high school, because I don't want these kids to grow up and like, you know, break windows or, you know, hurt me on the street, you know? So if I'm like, you know, positively redirecting them, then hopefully they'll become better people.
Did you tell your students about this show?
Huh? About this show? I told kids that I'd make art and I'll show them like pictures here and there. I invited one student to come, and he actually showed up with his dad. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
I was very flattered. He's a kid that I love. A really awesome kid.
That's neat.
So yeah, I'm really happy that happened.
That's great.
Yeah.
Kind of to begin, I wanted to bring everybody's attention to this piece hanging up here.
Oh.
I don't know if y'all can see because you're on the other side. Maybe you could describe it for them, what it is, and then talk a little bit about where these materials came from.
Oh yeah, totally. I think that those two pieces.
Yeah, feel free to get up and take a look at it.
Yeah, they were really important to be in the show, and especially in that position.
What is it? Can you describe for us what it is?
Well, one side is it's a painting on a bag of rice.
A rice bag?
Yeah. So just plastic, which
Yeah.
it's really hard to paint on, and I didn't gesso it. And that's just how I paint, is just directly onto the surface and then build off of that, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, but I feel like there's like that kind of like going for it mentality, which I'll go into further a little bit later. But yeah, that's just a bag of rice, and I feel like the work that I make has like some sort of reference to my cultural background, being Vietnamese American, and it's not. That's probably the more apparent piece that has something to do with a specific culture, right? Everything else, it's maybe if you didn't know me, you wouldn't have that connection, which I really like, because it's just like you either have that option as a viewer to dive into the work and the artist and then make that connection, or you don't. You look at the work and you have your own opinions on the work, and no one's going to tell you how to look at it, right? And
like that.
I like that range. Like when I look at something, I don't want people to tell me what it is. I like to come up to these conclusions because I have a brain and I use it sometimes, not at work, but sorry. Yeah. Like, I think people need to get over themselves. You know, I mean, I took a lot of time making this stuff, and I'm really like proud of it. And it's taken me a while to own that pride. And I guess that, you know, that grounds you, right? Is to have like this other kind of side where it's not completely self-indulgent and you work for money. You know, you have to have that range in order to exist. So I think that's important to realize about this body of work.
There's something also.
Oh no, go ahead.
There's something that's also that you've talked about. This is the third time I'm interviewing Simon, and he's talked about the labor involved in his work before.
Right. That goes back to like my parents being like, my dad is a retired machinist, and my mom working in education, you know, working really like intensely in their fields with labor, right? And just taking care of someone, that's a certain amount of labor that's put into it. Being a machinist, creating tools, a tool grinder, and then also my dad doing carpentry on the side, like his garage is full of all these tools, and it's like a whole installation unto itself, and which I kind of reference in a way in my work.
So what kind of labor goes into, say, a piece like this one here on the wall?
Oh, so that piece, it's gone through many incarnations, and it was started probably like 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you just like, you see it, and it's like, it had a certain state, and then you're happy with it for maybe a month or so, and then you're just like, I need to add something to it, or it needs to shift, but I don't want to lose the labor that was put into it. Time, and you could there's windows where you could see the first layer, or you could see the reference to it in texture. Which I think is really interesting, right? You can have a whole painting, and some of these have totally different paintings underneath them that I've just kind of built up from, and that work isn't totally lost because you see the texture.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how we equate texture with labor, and it's also and like us building up layers of paint with a brush or however method, and we find value in that. I think that's interesting, and that keeps me, gives me permission to keep on adding to a piece.
Right.
You know.
So how many hours would you estimate went into that piece?
Oh, I don't even know. I don't know.
Just a guess.
I don't know. I totally lose track of time when you're making work, because like you're thinking about the next line that I'm gonna. What'd you say?
So we should ask Kari. She might know better than you.
Yeah, it's just like too much time.
Yeah, too much time.
Yeah.
What would you say? 50 hours? 100 hours? 200 hours?
I don't know.
1,000 hours?
I'm gonna say a quadrillion.
A quadrillion?
Yeah.
A quadrillion hours?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Take note.
Yeah.
Fact-based.
Yeah. So, and that goes back to the process of making the work. It's like it starts off very gestural and spontaneous, which comes, I guess, from my background as an actor and doing stage and improv and starting a scene without anything other than a suggestion or a movement, and then going off of that and building a whole arc, a story arc perhaps,
Right.
in long form improv.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's what it starts, and with theater and improv, it's very much about play, right? You're playing, and people find amusement in that, you know. You're just like, yay, you're playing, and then you're in trouble, but then you work things out, and that's what, or you blow up, and it becomes a big disaster. Either one is what we're looking for.
That's
There's-
good improv.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's kind of what goes into painting. Is just it starts off really playful, and I don't really think about it because that's probably one of the hardest parts of a painting is starting it. So for me to get over that and be able to keep on painting is just starting off these gestural marks, which can also reference your personality, right? For me, like I feel like I'm an awkward person. And I like to own that, right? So just making awkward marks and just like kind of pulling the wrist around and seeing how awkward you can get, and then building off of that to make it something
Yeah.
substantial,
That's very
maybe.
much like improv. Like
Yeah,
as awkward
absolutely.
as you can get.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
right,
that makes
right.
a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then owning that kind of human trait,
Making
human
it bigger.
trait. Yeah.
It's a human trait.
So, yeah.
But does it ever happen that you paint over something and you wish you hadn't?
No, I think that's a big part of it, though. It's just like there's some parts where you're working the rest of the composition out and trying to make that one part work, and then you realize the one part that you love, you gotta destroy.
Yeah.
You know? Which is, I'm not gonna make any jokes about relationships because Kari's right here and she'll just bring it up later, which you'll probably bring up this later too. And going through a divorce.
I'm going to interrupt you right now, just for your own.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're
Yeah.
welcome. So, okay. So you have a piece and it's part of it and then you're going to paint over it because you have to. Do you take a photo of it before you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take pictures and post on Instagram, and whatever you think of Instagram and social media, it's got some bad and goods to it, but it keeps me accountable in a way, right?
Oh, interesting.
Whereas just like if you didn't have this kind of source of vague communication, like I'd be a total shut in and just be playing video games and like live my life without people, I guess.
So people are following Ghost Teeth on Instagram, which we all should do, and then they're hounding you for work and updates?
No one hounds me for anything. I'm just imposing this on people.
So they are passively hounding you. You're imagining that they're hounding you, or is it that
Oh
you
no,
post
I don't
something
look
and
at
you
it like
get this?
that. I look at it in terms of just like, well, this is me communicating with the world to kind of mark my existence,
Yeah.
And it's nothing vain. Although, I mean, I guess it could be taken as vanity because you're confronting your ego and hoping for likes or some sort of connection. I'm not going to get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's interesting that you use it as a form of accountability because a lot of artists say that social media actually is a detraction from their work ethic and their motivation.
Oh yeah, I guess for me it's just like I'll try to make a post and then kind of stay off of social media and just know that something's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe look at the reactions or whatever connections perhaps and think like, oh, okay, I exist because of my iPhone tells me I exist.
Because you exist.
Yeah. I Googled myself. No. Anyway, I had no joke with that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Sorry.
you could Google Ghost Teeth and you'd find yourself. You Google Simon Tran, you don't find yourself.
Oh yeah, which is interesting, right? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I guess. Yeah.
So have all your previous shows moved out of the canvas like this one did? I mean, this is wild. Like, this is huge. This is immersive.
Oh,
And it's going to have to, it's
Yeah.
definitely a compliment. It's going to have to be painted over again, which
Yeah,
reminds
That's
me
part
of
of it,
this
yeah.
like tragedy of painting over the things you love.
right.
But have all your shows been like that?
Not to this degree. My first show with the compound was based off of, it was a lot of installation elements, but it was mostly on a painted surface, just a bunch of wood pieces and
Okay,
stuff.
yeah,
Wood,
right.
yeah. but just painting directly on the wall, I think I enjoy it because it's something that's not going to last. So it's like definitely like an experience rather like than just something that's like a normal art show where things are just for sale and it once this is down something else is going to replace it kind of thing. Well, which is the case for
Right.
any gallery, but I like to have those moments where it's just like this isn't going to exist any other time. Well, this is it, right? And
so the
to be able,
temporality of it.
to be able to like be a part of that kind of, which goes back to maybe the performance and of like my experiences of just you create this moment, right? And it's just like the air. You're creating something in the air, which is really nice. I feel like, rather than just paintings, which are paintings are amazing and like also to partake in like some sort of like fleeting thing, where it's just going to be painted over next month, and so just to have a moment, I think is interesting, right?
Yeah. Do you think that the fact that you work sometimes outside near a creek, there's a creek that runs underneath Simon's house. It's like literally underneath the house. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And then outside in the back walk area,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of green space and a little bridge for deer to go across.
They took down the bridge
They took
actually.
that- What are the deer gonna do?
Huh?
What are the deer gonna do?
Uber?
Uber for deer?
Yeah, Uber. Yeah. Yeah. It's because it's not walkable, and the neighbors have kids that could possibly go on it, and it'll just break down.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, so
yeah,
they
yeah.
took it down.
Yeah.
Uber for deer could be Dober,
Dober.
like a doe.
Wah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. So does that? Do you think that has come into this space at all? The working
Yeah.
outside near the creek.
Well, I mean,
Water?
I've like for whatever reason, I feel like mimicking movement is like,
Yeah.
and maybe that might be coming from like interest in thinking about like painting being something that was before film, right? And then when film, moving images hit, people were just like, yeah, this is magic. And to be able to kind of bring that back into painting, which painting does anyway, but to kind of hone in on that, just the idea of movement and creating movement and stillness. There's some sort of magic in that for me, and I'm conscious of that. I think it comes from like following the previous line that was made and then just building off of that. That's the ripple effect that might come across in the work, and then also just the use of color. The way I'll use a certain color in one area and then mirror it on the other side of the. Right?
Yeah,
So if
I
you
feel
think,
like a triangle has movement where a square or a circle does not. Maybe a circle does.
well, I think all
Like
shapes
it's
have.
unbalanced.
Yeah,
Well, it's
yeah.
like unbalanced potentially.
Yeah. So I think about that. If I need to stop, I'll just do something in threes, and the third one I'll be like, okay, now I can stop. But then I break that rule sometimes because that's also an improv where you got to learn the rules before you break them, And then I think that break is also maybe a sense of, I don't know how much innovation I do, but I think in terms of how innovation happens, it happens because of this break out of these rules, right? And the idea of growth happens. And I'd like to kind of set that stuff up for myself in one way or another to keep me going,
Yeah. Do you feel like
But-
if you didn't do that, you wouldn't keep going?
Yeah, things would just get really monotonous and like it would be the same thing over and over again. Yeah, so I think it's important to like break out of things, but not in the sense where like I'm breaking out right now, I'm being different, which that comes off as kind of contrived and like forced. and not fun, and that's a job, you know?
Right.
So for me, just to let it kind of happen and then see what happens. Like for this show, this is very much like, oh, Simon, you just keep on painting and you don't stop painting, and that's your thing. And for this wall, that was like the complete opposite, where Matt had to tell me to stop. He literally told me to stop painting on that wall. Like this could, you know, there have been like thousands of other layers I could put on there. Not thousands, maybe.
Matt, why did you
5.
tell him to stop painting on the wall?
I think if everything has the same density as the really big installation, and it's not as impactful. Right, it's a little silence, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
Right.
call. Good call. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think going forth, I'd like to see how to push those boundaries in both directions, like how minimalist I can get and how dense can I get, you know. So
It seems like your work is moving much more towards abstraction. There used to be figures. Occasionally, they still pop up.
Yeah.
There's a friend in here.
yeah,
Nobody else
Yeah.
in this room.
the figures are more apparent in the drawings, which I've been doing over at work. Like in my downtime, I'll draw, and I think that's also kind of showing the kids like, well, some of the kids that I work with, they get distracted, you know, and then they get reprimanded because they're distracted, which is like, you know, it's not their fault. So for me to draw gives, I feel like I'm giving like.
Ooh.
Okay.
Here,
Um,
hold on.
Yeah, I feel like I'm giving kids modeling proper behavior by drawing, right? Like I'm still present because I'm doing something. I'm not on my phone, but like, so you know, I encourage kids to have a sketchbook or just to draw. Sometimes I'll like do this this activity called finish that shape, where I'll start a shape, draw some sort of shape, and they'll add to it, and we'll slowly go back and forth. I do that with my kid, and you know, it's fantastic
Kind of an
stuff
exquisite
happens.
corpse.
Yeah, that kind of mentality. Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
I've been telling people it's kind of your sketchbook for the last couple of years, basically.
Right.
Like all the pieces framed, works on paper.
Yeah. And what's nice about the installation with the drawings being the first thing you see, that becomes like, okay, you see this, and the paintings and then the drawings, the works on paper reference each other and become the guidelines for each other, and have this kind of dialogue, I guess. Because like some of these shapes, or the shapes in general, I feel like have reference to the human figure, or a body part, and then which is illustrated more in the drawings. If you look at the contour of the shape of the figure in the drawings, you could perhaps see one of these shapes, and vice versa. So those become like, if you carried around a drawing and you looked at some of the paintings, you might be able to see the parallels between the two.
Are you encouraging us to pick up the drawings and walk around with them?
Yeah, $85 each and $75 for two.
Take one home.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it.
Okay, but where are the figures going?
Where are they going?
Yeah, they're not as
Well,
prevalent.
yeah, I feel like with painting and with art, it's not about one thing. And I feel like when you're painting a figure, it becomes about the figure, which is, I know it's not just about the figure when people paint the figure. But for me, it's just like, I like to bury things in there and put other ideas on top of that, and create things that it's definitely a non-narrative kind of narrative, where it's not about one thing, and it leaves the audience the ability to be open-ended with their interpretation, right? Versus like you just like, this is about being Vietnamese American, which it is to me, but that's to me. I make it, and you know, it's just, that's my experience with the work. But of course, like when someone looks at the work, they can see maybe the ocean or something.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, think about like a narrative as being a sequence of causally connected events through time. What you're showing instead is like a process, like a collage,
Yeah.
where people can kind of make their own narrative if they.
Yeah. Hopefully contribute to innovation later, you know, for other people to look at things and maybe look at it like, oh, I didn't really think about this shape or as being something else, and sparking creativity. That's the goal, right? If you're going to make something, your ultimate thing is to spark some sort of have some sort of spark in someone else, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you looking at me like?
No, I'm looking at you because I'm interviewing you, but
Oh. I'm looking at the floor.
All right. I can look at these people too. So you said that you recommend to the students that they keep their own sketchbooks and that kind of thing.
Right.
What has drawing meant to you in your life?
Well, I guess going back to starting off with drawing, my relationship with drawing started off with my dad making drawings for me. When I was super little, I remember running around the house with a dragon that he drew and just kind of pretending it was real, and so that was that's what my relationship with drawing has been, is just that kind of connection. And it's something we all do or have done in one time in our lives. We all have drawn, right? So it's you're connecting to everybody else in one way or another. Regardless of how things are rendered, we all have drawn.
So when you're drawing, what's the feeling you have?
Well, that I don't know. I mean, it's very soothing to kind of do it, right?
Yeah.
There's therapeutic kind of sense in drawing, but there's also this kind of direct mark that. That references something else in a direct kind of visual way. But also it's drawing has been connected to me through comic books and anime and video games. This drawing is heavy in all of those
Right.
mediums. So.
Do you see an influence of comic books, anime, and video games in your work?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. In the drawings, definitely. That series was made over the course of over a year. Last year, I referenced images that I saw on Google or just in passing. I'd go to the library with some of the kids and they would leaf through manga, and I would as well, and an image would pop up. I wouldn't really second guess it. I would just be drawn to the aesthetics of it and then just draw it. And then build off of that and creating more patterns around it. And I think because we're inundated with images, you guys all know that, and we're completely saturated with images. And I like the idea of these passive kind of images and trying to kind of bookmark them somehow.
Passive images?
Or just images that are in your peripheral, right? Or
that just
something
kind of you happen upon
yeah, and it's just oh, that's cool, or you're impacted in one way or another, and then that's what that series was about for me.
Right.
And then creating these bookmarks for inconsequential images, I guess. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. How are we doing for time?
It's totally up to you.
Okay.
Well, are we a good time for questions at all? If anybody's interested, or.
Is there questions? I can just keep talking. So.
Simon, would you like to talk about your installation a little bit? I think it's right behind you. I think I'll give you a little insight.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see him work on that. We have a pretty quick turnaround with the gallery, so on a Sunday night, our last show went down, and Simon showed up at 6 or 7:30 basically, and then started working on all the installation pieces, and he worked on it throughout the duration of the week until we had the next opening on Saturday. And it was really fun. It was kind of chaotic in here, and I just kind of put on my blinders, because I'm always okay, we got to keep things in order. It's we're gonna keep track of stuff. And Simon just explodes all over the place and just paint everywhere. He's working over here, he's working over there, he's cutting chunks of wood out. I mean, this whole installation was truly an improvisational.
Right. Yeah.
He just made that up on the spot. I don't know, it was really interesting to see work on it.
Oh.
And it really came together beautifully. And he
Oh,
works in
thank you.
kind of large swaths of color, and then gets in there with the detailed brush toward the end. I don't know, it was definitely improv.
Oh.
Sure. And musical, I guess.
What's that?
Musical as well,
Oh.
in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
We had, and then the 2 Saturdays after that, we had live DJs doing records, and Simon was doing some live painting, and that was,
Yeah.
it kind of informed me a little bit about your process and how you're,
Yeah.
there's a lot of improvisation.
Yeah, the painting in the hallway was the painting from the live painting, and it was nice to have at that time. Just my friend goes by DJ Indiana Jones. He DJs for at UC Davis. He just had great music, and it just kept me going. Usually, I paint in stints of like maybe an hour or two, and then I'd take a break. For that time, I painted like basically the whole time, and I was able to knock out.
How many
the painting.
hours?
A trillion.
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
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 Quadrillion or trillion? Matt, how many hours?
Yeah, right? But
Okay.
but yeah, so it was nice. The music like kept me going and motivated, and it was nice to kind of have that, and just like the act of spinning records and is the performance of that kind of was what I was feeding off of, and that's a big part of the work as well as music, right? And there's just like a way of like reacting to the music, and in a way it was really important to listen to music, because like I paint mostly in my bedroom just because of space, and it's nice to roll out of bed and just paint and live with the work, and there's a certain intimacy that happened because of that. But it was important to have music because I was in like that isolation of being in that space. It was nice to have that music to kind of feel like, oh, people making music is like such a beautiful art form, and them expressing themselves in word and lyric and chord. It just gave me kind of the courage to keep on going, because like times you feel like you're making work and it's just like, what the fuck is this for? You know, what is this for? I'm just painting, like I'm painting blobs of shapes. Like, what is that?
It's for the spark, the creative spark you were just talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
But you forget that.
Yeah, you forget that because it's like you have bills to pay and you have the rest of your life to work with. And here I am like, oh, the contour of this purple bean is really important to get off, you know? And it's just like, it's crazy. It's crazy. Art is, yeah, but like, so I needed that music of just like, this is like, it's in a way was a concrete thing of just like, yeah, this is beautiful. I'll keep on going. So I could kind of react and like try to participate.
Is there a certain kind of music that you do your work to the best?
No, it's just a range.
A range?
Like, yeah, I mean, I listen to punk, indie, funk, some jazz in there as well. Jazz is really nice to paint too. I have a draw for abstract expressionism, and you know, like jazz is such a big
Right.
was a big part of that, and to kind of like hone in on that is nice. Yeah.
Okay. I heard two things here. I'll get to you in a second. One was that Matt said that you just kind of explode all over the place. And the other is that you said you work in your bedroom.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how that works.
It's definitely related, right? It's just, I go back to,
I mean,
like,
how do you explode all over your bedroom and then go to sleep? Like, I just don't understand.
you know, that's a private thing. But I go back to important driving thought was Louise Nevelson. Is she the one? She's the one that makes those monochromatic installations, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember reading something about her saying that those installations were her dream houses, her dream homes, and for me, I was just like being in this small space, which in Berkeley, it's a awesome house, but I'm just renting a room with Kari, and just being there, it's a small space, you know, and it's nice to have this opportunity to kind of spread out. That's all that really is.
Here.
Yeah. And you know, bless your hearts for letting me have that opportunity to kind of just, you know, stretch, and it's about that, right? It's just about creating this kind of space, and it's nice to be able to do that, and I don't take that for granted. At times, like when I'm at work and I'm working with these kids, I have no connection to this, and I'm just it's kind of it can really be hard to work in that environment with these kids that all they care about is their Fortnite and their, whatever, they're kids, it's okay. But it's just like, sometimes it's hard. And just to have this opportunity to do this is a blessing, you know? Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Should we get to that question?
Well, okay.
Or comment?
Could your strategy possibly be a non-strategy? Do you find yourself going, oops, I'm overthinking this, and then do you defeat your strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to come off as being pompous because I that's just not, you see people being pompous and you don't want to be that, right? And you want to be respectful and like, I'm going to reset these walls, happily paint over this, I'm not sad at all about it going away, if anything, I'd like to make it as clean as possible for the next people to kind of have a really nice experience, hopefully, and but I totally get defeated, self-defeated, because I'm doing things that are just not really, it's very reactive and it's not completely research based, although it is based off of my background and trying to interpret that and redirect that into something tangible. And it's hard. You go into this place where it's not something that hasn't been created in your mind. So you get to these places that are just like, what is this? Like, this isn't something that I've seen before. I can't make reference to it. Although, of course, there's painters that paint in this style. I'm not saying I'm unique. But it's unique for that time and that space and that moment, right? That is what I have to really hold on to. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
So you say you'll paint over this wall.
Yeah.
I see that wall is full of things stuck to the wall.
Yeah.
Do you imagine reusing those
Oh,
in other work?
yeah.
Or not? Or
Absolutely, which makes me think of the whole process of the work. It's all like these are parts of paintings that I had made before, and then just painted over them, added to them, like just anything else, and then cutting out pieces from like a rectangular shape, and then using those as well. Definitely influenced by this space where people will make their work, and then the discarded materials goes into the bin. And like I've dug around and got some pieces out of the bin and just used that. I think that's kind of like a nice idea, a sentimental kind of thing to these like dismissed objects, which is an amazing part of art where artists will focus on the mundane, and the discarded. And that's my way of kind of just like, yeah, you can reconfigure it and deconstruct and reconfigure and keep on going. And I feel like if nobody's interested in the work, I'll keep on painting over it and cut it up some more to kind of change the form. What's important to me is to kind of change the initial form of it so that you can feel like you've made a mark and make some sort of difference, and if that makes any sense.
Wait, was that a threat?
What's that?
Is that a threat?
Yeah. If none of you are interested in these pieces, I will paint over it.
Right now.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the vessels down here? We have this.
Oh, yeah.
What would you describe as an urn?
It could be interpreted as an urn. I feel like this installation.
Could be interpreted. Okay.
I mean,
You tell me.
I'm interested in altars, especially like those in like businesses, like a donut shop, like a little altar that would be there for good luck or for ancestors or whatever. Just like that kind of juxtaposition that is created in a way where, yeah, I'm just interested in that and like recreating that in a sense. A big part of me painting and staying with painting is like after my uncle passed away, I felt really helpless, and he passed away. He took his own life, and I felt like that was like something that was like in the family of like a whole lineage of depression, And so I felt like I had to do something, create something, which was creating a baby and also painting, which was my way of dealing with that in my family.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so the altar has a little bit of that.
Yeah, in a way,
Yeah.
yeah. I was going to put pictures of my uncle by it, and then my mom once told, like, she's like, don't do that, don't do it. And it was just like, in a way I understand, because it's just like I'm taking it out of the certain context maybe, or putting on display for everybody. And, well, me talking about it makes it into kind of a somewhat public thing, but I don't know, there's a certain reverence that we shouldn't mess with, I guess.
So is there also a sense of shame in your family about the way that he died?
Yeah, I mean, of course.
So you're talking about both reverence and then also this sense of shame that often comes when a family member commits
and that's a
suicide.
part of the work as well,
Yeah.
is all of that, right? And I want to have that range where it's not, you're enticed by the color and you look at it, and then perhaps you think about the shapes and like the relationships of the shapes themselves, and then the awkwardness of the shapes and the contour, and like thinking about like, for me, that's a hot, like another hour of conversation, but there is a lot to the awkwardness of those shapes, and it's not just like a personal thing, but also kind of thinking about. I work with a population of differently abled people, and yeah, you get affected by that, you know, and yeah.
You mean that you develop compassion, or that you see the world differently?
Yeah, it's compassion, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe that's a good note to end on, unless there are other questions? No? Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
for listening.